We can go. We can start, right?
Yeah. I was just making sure everybody's like, here, Dan Warren.
Oh God, it's like school again.
Yes, I said it's gonna be like.
And everybody who's not here,
Dan is
raise their
supposed to be here.
I'm having flashbacks of
right.
college.
Yeah.
She was one of my teachers.
She's my best student, for real.
all right.
Like she's in my science fiction class. Okay. Amy, did you aim? We're holding for 5 or we're good?
The only person I saw up there left was Willem. He was just finishing his sandwich.
And like,
For sandwich.
how much finished sandwich? 2 bites or like a half a sandwich?
This entire panel is stopped because he's 2 bites of a sandwich.
He can bring the sandwich in here.
Wait, we have sandwiches?
Yeah, because
Can we hold for another 10?
Do you want a snack? I really do have
I'm
one.
okay.
Are you sure?
we got a bag.
Pull an old sandwich out of her bag. You want this?
Sit here with the panel.
Amy, you're supposed to be up front helping moderate. What are you doing back there?
Here they are.
Nope. Eat tomorrow.
He's like the long Tetris piece.
Yes, he is a long Tetris piece. But he got his Hedvig criterion for tomorrow night. So
Oh, wow.
he's VIP now.
No, I mean
Nice.
like the thing you're all waiting for because the long
Yeah.
one is also the one that always fixes all your
Well, right,
Yeah.
and he did. He fixed our problem. So that
Unless-
was the.
Yeah, unless you put it in wrong and then you just ruin yourself.
Okay, do you have the
We need to
questions?
accept that.
I know, and it's up in the list.
I have them on my email if you want to just look at them on my phone.
Yeah, could you pull this
We'll
up?
wait until I finish the sandwich.
Yeah, pull up this.
Technology.
What? That's the panel. Clearly.
So what's your dissertation? Like what's the...
Feminist fans of science
Well, that
fiction.
should be recorded.
Yeah.
So if I do this.
Kylo Ren and Ray better hook up, or I'm done.
No, sorry.
Oh no, they better hook up because he's so hot.
So you know, this goes
Did you see
But yeah,
Mother?
it's Star Wars and Doctor Who. That's my
Oh, nice.
the one on Netflix.
Yeah, the new
Yeah,
one.
it
What'd
was
you think of
nice.
that? Yeah.
It was nice. I wasn't mind
Yeah,
blown.
right? It was kind of, I mean, it felt
You got the
like I
question,
had
Dave?
seen that story before,
Yeah, they
but
use
told
a
in a
lot of-
different way.
Yeah, they use a lot of like tropes and things
Yeah.
that we're used to.
Yay! Got a sandwich.
Actually, I pretty much forgot the movie by now.
That's kind of how I feel. Like I remember
was
the
your
robot.
sandwich?
Yeah, there was a
and
robot.
That's about it.
I think we're
Okay, we're good to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to start off by introducing why this is such an important topic and why we chose this as a theme for this year. And then we're going to show a little clip to contextualize some different opposing opinions about constructed identities. And then after that, ShannaNina has put together a little presentation about Twitch, and then we're going to have an organic flow of conversation about constructed identities. So Amy wrote some questions for me, because sometimes it's hard to articulate exactly why something's important to you unless somebody asks you. So Amy asked why I chose this theme. And for me, it was really a generational thing. I'm a Gen Xer and I grew up before the internet, and we had to actually communicate in a different way. And I feel like, you know, when I'm in my 70s or 80s, I'll be like, I was the last to remember what life was before the internet. And it has become such a way of life that is ingrained in our social fabric at such a pace that's so fast. I felt like I haven't been able to keep up with it. And it has both terrified me and fascinated me at the same time, being a science fiction professor. So I made sure that I had a panel here that represented both sides of the spectrum. So we have some academics here, and we have some people that actually do have online constructed identities and have formed communities online. And at first I'm going to say I was biased because I felt like it's kind of a cop-out to find a community online. And this started in February, and after meeting the panelists and doing more research, I have definitely changed my point of view, which I hope is the point of this panel, is to have a really, compelling debate and discussion about where we're headed as a human race and as society and how we connect with each other, both online and offline. Why we chose these particular, and these are questions from Amy, why we chose these particular panelists to speak on the topic. This is Laura, and what year was my science fiction class?
2010?
So I
What's it?
taught a science fiction class in the late 20th century at the University of New Mexico, and Laura was one of my most brilliant students. And when I say that, I'm not just saying that because she's here, but her insight into the films and then contextualization with social, political relevance was so insightful. And then years later, we caught up again on Facebook and meeting up again and seeing one of my former students now move on to something spectacular is just the most rewarding thing, and which is why I do what I do. So we've had some compelling conversations about CERN and wormholes and all kinds of online things, but she's going to be the devil's advocate here and challenge the panelists about online community and relevance. And then Neda, do I say your name right? Yodovich?
Yeah.
Is an Israeli lady who is studying at the University of Manchester, and she's about to submit her dissertation. Her PhD, and about to get married, and she still agreed to come, so thank you very much for coming. And what was the theme this year of your conference? We met at the
Identities in times of change.
Identities in Times of Change, so transitional identity, so I thought it was perfect time, and I said, I need you to come speak at my panel. And then we got Miss Shauna Zwart, who is a Twitch phenomena, and I didn't even know what Twitch was, so I had to learn, and she's going to explain more. I still am lost as to what that is, but Twitch and this online community that she formed came at a very relevant part in her life, and she's going to talk more about that and why it's important to not, as I formerly did, dismiss these communities online so quickly. I thought they were vacuous and empty. And I learned from Shauna that they are the exact opposite. So thank you for helping me change my frame of thought on that. And then finally, Tatiana Pirogova, our YouTube celebrity. Completely, really random how I found this one. I was binging on multi-level marketing YouTube content, and in your algorithms it says suggested viewing, and up came Tatiana, and I said, wow. This is somebody that has commentary, a constructed identity, yet is also, the reason I love Miami Vice, criticizing, but working in the realm of online communities as well. And so I think Tatiana is way ahead of her time in that aspect. So I had to have him at the panel as well. So that's why I chose these panelists. Are we all in real and virtual lives just the version of ourselves or who we choose to project? We're going to see that after the clip. I think David Bowie has something really interesting to say about that. Rest in peace. And why this is the theme this year to highlight. Being a science fiction professor, finding things, I don't know if you remember this when we were talking about the China syndrome, how something is science fiction, and then 12 days it went from science fiction to being a thriller because it actually happened. So seeing the things in the 70s and 80s that I've studied, like actually coming into fruition, is both fascinating and frightening to me as well. And that's why I chose this, because I find, books like Boundaries of Self, Reality Online, that reality is now becoming blurred, or is it becoming more enhanced? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So we're going to show the clip real quick, and then we're going to, I'm sorry, you had something to say?
Sorry for a very German question. Could you quickly define what exactly a constructed identity is?
Okay, so constructed identity, something constructed is intentional. So when we talk about like an avatar or something you put online or put out to the rest of the world.
Online, or is it just me making up a new name?
It could be making up a new name. It doesn't have to be online. Online just happens to be the panel we have today.
So how is this different from identity?
That's what
in
we're
general?
going to discuss.
You're in for a treat.
That is part of what we are going to go into. So save that, put a pin in it. That's where we're going to go. So if we could show the clip real quick, and this is going to be some food for thought. This is how I started. So this was my own bias. So we will show the clip and go from there.
I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I don't think we need even to see his face. Like, we don't need his. Oh my God, I still can't believe he's gone. Like, he's still here, you know? Okay, so that clearly came from a Gen X point of view of bias as to the downside of online communities. But again, my mind has changed, and I want to turn this over to Shauna right now as to how online communities actually are beneficial and how they helped you. If you want to tell your personal story about that
Yeah,
and who you are.
the video I have actually probably fits your standpoint better than
Oh.
mine, but I wanted to show it anyway because I feel like, so it's a clip by Bo Burnham, which is a comedian who got big through YouTube and Vine. So he basically owes the internet his career. And he started doing these Netflix specials of an hour long. And this is from his second Netflix special where he also announced that he's going to stop doing comedy because the whole online world kind of makes him very unhappy with himself. So the video, I think it's a 3-minute video, and it's about how our society is built around social media right now.
Okay, so we'll show that clip. And don't drink too much beer before panels. I thought that was very apropos.
Yeah, I think so. His first show is all about like internet kind of meme kind of humor, and then this show is very introspective. And I think this is very, at least for me, very relatable as a person who created their job on the internet, and maybe for you as well, where you're like, I don't want to do this all the time. When I'm not live, when I'm not performing, I don't even check my computer or my phone. I just need to get away from it. And so this is why this is very relatable to me.
But when it's so constantly infiltrated in our life, how can you divide that balance?
It's hard. Like I
Especially when you have so many followers and the demand for content rises, and you have to keep that, especially because this is your livelihood. You make money off of this.
For me, it took 2 burnouts to stop caring. Like over the last 6 years, I recently took a 1.5 month break, and I didn't turn on my PC for 1.5 months because I didn't feel like doing it anymore. Even though you're like, but you only have to play video games, for a living. It's still, you have to do it every day. And after 6 years, I needed a break. And now, after I've found another job, and I'm not completely dependent on the income of my channel anymore, it's suddenly become more of like a hobby, and then it's fun again. And I can kind of, when I'm not doing it, I can kind of let it go.
So you feel a little more liberated.
Because it's not my income anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, because before that I had to, every time I wasn't streaming, I had to post on Twitter, like what I was doing, or Instagram, or anything. Just to kind of let people know that I was still there, because if your TV stops working, like if one of your channels stops working for 12 hours, you're going to switch channels too. You're not just going to sit there and like wait for it to come back.
But at some point it's not genuine anymore, because when you first do it and you're full of passion, I would think like any art, that's why you get the followers. That's why people love you, because you're doing it for the love. But when you're doing it because it's your job and you have to maintain that content, people notice that.
It's a vicious circle, because people don't like watching somebody who sits there with like a straight face, like, I don't know, I'm just doing this for the money. And then you get less money because people don't show up anymore, and then you get more grumpy because you're not making as much money. And you're like, where does this go? It's a downward spiral.
So you think the path for the future, because this is, I mean, it boggles my mind from when I was a kid to now how much internet activity we have and our personas online. It boggles my mind that we are constantly in it. So now to divide and separate from it, I kind of now have cyber anxiety, where if I'm away from it for a little bit, I haven't checked my emails, and then there's like 20 emails I got to get to. So if I'm not constantly updating, then I'm missing out on that.
Yeah, and it piles up as well.
And it piles up. So to get back on it, if you're not constantly up to date with it, it piles up, and then you got to get back to it.
But I guess it was the same when people still received letters. Like, I don't want to
Like fan mail, but then you had like a
like, I don't want to
assistant,
open this letter today. I don't want to deal with reality. I don't know. I have no idea.
But they didn't expect an immediate
We've
reply.
We've never,
Right.
it's before my time.
Right. Well,
Technology.
that's what I mean, the immediacy. Like if somebody
Yeah.
sends you a text, they expect an answer right
Yeah.
away.
Also,
Whereas a
the thing
letter-
with snail mail is if you left your house, it wouldn't follow you in your pocket. It wouldn't
Yeah.
like hop into your
Yeah,
coat.
it's-
and, like,
or an answering machine even
Yeah.
on the phone, like you answered the phone when you got home.
Yeah.
So
But what if you didn't?
people would worry.
well, right, but after a few days,
There's
but like
always an option to not do it. There's consequences, but it's like that with everything, not just the internet. I think if you really desperately need to get away from something, you can. It's just that maybe you're gonna miss a few emails, which is an easy price to pay, I think. I don't know. But I'm sounding very negative right now because I'm just in this kind of period where I'm like reconsidering my job choices. But for like, I don't know if everyone knows what Twitch is, by the way.
Well,
Yes,
that's what you're
Oh.
here for. Welcome, Shanna's Vart.
Sorry, I
Twitch
feel like I'm taking
streamer,
over the
yeah.
panel though. Am I not like?
No, but we're gonna, don't
Okay.
worry, we're gonna.
So what I do is I make live streams online, where
But
I.
why did you start? That's the most personal part.
Oh yeah, that's the tearjerker part.
That's the tearjerker part.
So 2013, 12, 2000, I don't know, 6 years ago. My dad passed away, and then 8 or 9 months after that, I lost my job and my relationship ended, and I just was home. I was home, I was gaming 16, 18 hours a day, just kind of, there was like a path from my bed to my PC, and that was it. The rest was like pizza boxes and bullshit. So that was my kind of way to not deal with anything happening. And I used to watch a lot of channels on Twitch, which is a live streaming platform, kind of like YouTube, but it's live. So when you can type to people and they reply to you within like half a minute or something, like you see them on a webcam and all of that. So I was like, you know what, why not start doing something like that? Like I can do that. And then it kind of took off, and 4 or 5 months later I could live off of the income, and that's 6 years ago. And it's always been my full-time job until recently, where I decided to take that financial burden off of it, because it's very unstable income. You're kind of depending on other people's generosity most of the time. So yeah, that's what Twitch is.
Well, that's what Laura and I, we were talking about old versus new media, whereas it seems so fickle when you have YouTube content or Twitch content that you could get monetized, and maybe Tatiana can speak to this as well. Some of your videos have been monetized and some have been demonetized. Whereas when you do have like a deal with a radio station or TV, it's a done deal. You have a contract, you know the money's coming in, the content's there, it's edited, it's out. Whereas online, it could come and go, and you can't really count on that. So, Tatiana, if you want to speak to like how you grew so quickly and they get monetized and demonetized and what that even means.
So most of my content on YouTube revolved around effectively reading out people's posts that they have on the Reddit, another website, and I would do comedy based on them. I'd mock things, certain things in the internet, and it would just be a general comedy video. But the reason I grew really quickly, I went from I started October last year. By Christmas, I had 100 subscribers, and then in the next month, I gained 1,000, and then in the month after that, I gained 30,000. The reason I grew very, very quickly was because of how the algorithm works in YouTube. So if you produce content which is that the algorithm thinks is good and that people want to watch, then it will shove it in their face and will not let go. It will just tell them, watch this, and that's all they'll see. And most people will just click on it just to see what this is, and that's why I gained a really quick audience. Basically because YouTube has a robot which is a god and can decide whether we fail or win. So luckily I was blessed for a tiny amount of time, and I grew really, really quickly. The way that monetization works is that after you gain a certain amount of audience, YouTube allows you to put adverts on each of your videos. When someone watches it, you earn basically a penny, a cent, something like that. It's a very small amount of money. It used to be more, it's slowly been getting less and less, mainly because of the amount of people on the website. They have to share out a lot of the advertising revenue, and advertisers don't want to pay as much. So generally speaking, it's very low. So you want as many views as you can possibly get. The way that it works now is that if some advertisers don't want to put their adverts, for example, Coca-Cola do not want to put their adverts on a video that might be seen as offensive, because that would look bad for their brand if they were advertising on that sort of video. So there's certain guidelines you have to follow. If you don't follow those guidelines to the letter, your video will be demonetized and you won't be able to earn any money from it.
And how does that affect your content? Because when you first started, you didn't give a flying fuck.
Yeah. So So obviously, yeah, for the first 1,000 subscribers, because you need 1,000 subscribers to get advertisers. It doesn't matter. All you're trying to do is attract people, and you don't care. So I used copyrighted music. I didn't care about that. I would happily swear in all my videos, and I wouldn't give a shit about who heard it, because that's fine. People wanted to hear that. As soon as I got to advertising, I had to start thinking about it. So generally speaking, things like swearing are not allowed on the system. However, again, it's not a human being that's checking it. It's a robot who might decide that day that, actually, I don't like the word fuck. No advertisements for you. On other days, it might really like it. It's not important.
At least my income isn't depending on a robot.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
That's our argument on our side
Yeah.
of old media, is that you're actually talking to a person, that this is quality, here's a contract, here's your money.
Yeah, well, people pay me directly as well.
So Twitch is a much better website for earning advertising revenue because they have a donation culture, which has basically.
So it's like a crowdfunding for content.
You feel
Yeah.
like when you're watching
Yeah.
someone, you feel like you're supposed to give them money, because it's just that sort of website. It's always had that culture of I want to support this creator.
Like for
Bam,
me,
and you send off money.
I do
That's what it
music
is.
on Twitch as well. Like I sing, I play guitar, I play piano, and I broadcast that from my room. And so people will donate like €5. Like, can you sing Wonderwall? Even
So
though,
kind of like you're a basker and people are walking
Yeah, it's
by
like-
and put some money
yeah.
in your hat,
and
but
some days,
online.
because I don't want to sing for 4 hours every day, because I do like a 4.5 hour concert in between. I talk with my chat and stuff, but I can't do that every day. So then I play games on the other days where I don't feel like it, and that could be any other game, any other day. Like it's just I basically do wherever I want on my channel.
So playing a game, if you could talk about that, because to me, we'd go to the arcade, play a little Centipede, go to the mall, check people out, go home. What is this game thing you're talking about? Like, what is this? Like, people play games online together?
Yeah. And then my viewers can join if they want. Sometimes if I'm playing a game that's multiplayer, I give them like a room code or something and they can join. It's kind of like a team building exercise, but with people I've never met.
Okay, so this is something I kind of want to ask Netta then, because her expertise is fandom culture. Let's say, for instance, Shanna, you decide you don't want to do this anymore. And the people that are coming in consistently, and they built a community around you and your brand and who you are, and they found each other through you. Say you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. What happens to fans when the culture is gone?
Well, first of all, someone becomes a fan because they enjoy the content, because they like the content. But once they form a community, and they start forming friendships among each other, then the fandom becomes secondary to the relationship that they created.
So you're saying, like, if she had gone, then they will continue on together in another format?
You know, the people who created really tight bonds with each other, they will continue their friendships. But also, I think that now with fans, there's a really nice trend where they care for the artist's well-being. I think the most famous examples from now are Ariana Grande and BTS, where fans really asked for the performers to take a break because they understood that they're going through something, and they really put things on Twitter and online and asking them, please take a break, cancel even the concerts that we have tickets for. We don't want to go.
Okay.
If you're
Well, that's
feeling
happened with
like
you
that.
two guys, like, because you were gone on hiatus, both of you.
Yeah.
And so the people that are following you, they're like, dude, we'll be back when you come back.
I've even had people, I haven't streamed in 1.5 months. I've had people donate when I'm not live, just over PayPal, because like I took a break after my relationship ended and they knew that I needed time. And so I took a 1.5 month break and I made probably like €2,200 from not streaming. And they were like, here's just, I want to help you out and you have to move house now and here's rent a van, here's €200. And then if like 10 people do that, out of like 50, I have 53,000 followers. So like if you only need 10 out of those people to have
Humble brag there.
just
shove that in
weird
there.
flex.
But,
Yeah,
you know,
53,000.
Laura will be the devil's advocate here. We were having a
send them all
conversation
your
about fandom going wrong when
Yeah.
it starts having, remember the conversation we were
Yeah.
having in your office?
Well, and so the first question I would like to ask is, do you feel like there's any change, though, in your fans? Like, do they in any way feel special privileges toward you because they're paying you, and how does
Right.
that affect your
I get
life?
special access, or I got.
Because they
Yeah.
both
Do you get
care
that too?
about you and are kind of sycophants almost. Like, well, I paid you this money. Does that happen?
Do I own you now?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I think there's always been some fans which are like they, for example, I don't get money on YouTube, but I do get it from a site, a third party site called Patreon, which is like they put a certain amount of money in and they pay you monthly for your thing. And even as you were saying, when you were on hiatus, you got donations. People stayed with my Patreon when I was away for my exams and when I've been away this month. And people do want to stick with you. I feel like I haven't had many. Like I've only had like one or two, which are like, after they've given money to me, they're like, oh, I think you should do this or this. But it's more of a suggestion, and a lot of them don't leave even if I don't take them up on their suggestion. And I think that there's a lot more care for like the creator, for example. Like I feel like when people do donate, they know that they're just supporting you and what you're doing. They like your content that you're doing right now enough that they're like, here's a little something to support yourself, because they know a lot of people do need that.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of really creepy interactions. I think it's also the fact that I'm a girl and like probably 95% of my audience is male, because gamer culture is male dominated, I think still, which is a shame.
You get creepers too.
I can get a few.
Have you had people come up to you like in real life?
No.
Oh, I had someone at my door.
Oh, I got. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
There was like two guys.
I had a PO box for a while. Somebody sent me a vibrator anonymously. Like that's harassment. It's creepy. And I've had people send me really creepy love letters, like but not sweet, like very very kind of attached, and it was very. It's strange because I'm not a completely different person on my channel. I share a lot that's real. And I don't share everything, and I sometimes exaggerate certain parts of my personality, but I'm not a different person. So they feel like they know me, and they're my friends, but I have no idea. Like to me, they're just Dragon Slayer 420 or something in my chat. Like I have no idea what their real names are, what they look like, but they feel very connected.
How many people use their real names on chats? Because on everything, I'm my name.
Almost no one.
No one.
I do.
Almost no one.
Spectacular mistake. I just already, I made my account and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I didn't make it with the intention of making it a job.
So
my-
people are
my
more
real name.
emboldened behind this veil of anonymity, I think.
Yeah. Like
mean-
they can say whatever they want.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
every stream is like, you're fat, you're ugly, you have 4 chins.
You're like, say that to my face, like, you know, let's
say
see.
that to my 4 chins.
You know, I will say, interestingly, though, all 4 of them, 4 times. Interestingly, though, like as we've been sitting here talking about this, I've thought about how this relates to my medium, which is broadcast media. It's very different. We're kind of in this shift now, going from broadcast to online. And it's not entirely unique to online culture, because I used to do a radio show many years ago in a town of about 100,000 people. And I was recognizable to people. I would do events and they would come out, or people would hear me and they would recognize me. And I always knew who was a fan and who was just somebody that like I knew in real life because I used a different name on the radio. But the hate, I mean, I think it's more severe online, certainly. People say things that they would never say in person. But I would get people coming up to me at events that would be like, oh, you're Tori? You look different than I thought you looked. And I'd be like, oh, really? How? I thought you'd be pretty. And then they walk off, and it's like, you drove across town to tell me that. Like, what is your life like? So I think that it's not entirely unique to online. It's just more. And I think that's the thing about online culture, is it's just another version of what we've experienced in our lifetime, just heightened.
Kind of amplified,
Yeah.
right?
Because the anonymity makes it very easy to...
Oh, well, this was what we had talked about. Ideal self versus actual self, and cognitive dissonance, cognitive shift of anonymity. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, and so ideal self versus actual self is actually a thing that they talk about in psychology, where if you have, so you have what you think you are in your mind, and then you have what you have to accept is the actual you that people see out in the world. Now, if those two things collide, if they're not the same, you'll end up with cognitive dissonance, and that's where people get a lot of like identity crisis and depression, and a lot of it can stem from that. And so
Second Life
yeah.
author.
And so I think online, almost everyone is suffering from a version of that, because you have your avatar, you have your online self, you have your, I went on this trip and look at the amazing food that I ate and the things that I saw and the way that I dressed. But that's just what you choose to show people, as opposed to, I had to walk, for 20 minutes to the train and I was sweaty and I was tired. Now, we don't show those things to people. But so we've become so performative in our lives that everyone has their ideal self, which is now their online self, and their actual self, which is who they are in the real world. But increasingly, more and more, you're living that online self.
That's what the video was about as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's also how you handle. I feel like you have to learn how to use the internet. I feel like it should be.
It needs to be taught in schools. Yeah, like internet
Some things
literacy.
I share everything. Like if I feel like shit and I'm in bed all day, I tell my viewers, I'm like,
Really?
I'm not live today because I feel depressed or something like that. Because I think it encourages people to, first of all, not hide those feelings when they feel them themselves, which is very detrimental for mental health. And I'm always open about everything on my channel. Like I work for a mental health, like I work for Movember, which is also a mental health charity. And so yeah, I always share those kind of things as well because I feel like more people should. So why shouldn't I?
So then that's a good question to Netta. Then do fans expect these things from the content, from the celebrities, from what they like? Because we were talking about fans like kind of overpowering than the actual content.
Yeah.
And you had called it a media puppy mill, the sheer enormity of content. When is the line drawn between being a fan and then having actual say in the content and the art of it?
I guess I'll
Like, at what
talk
point
more-
are they like, no, you're not sick anymore, it's time for more content?
I don't know too much about that. I think maybe I can talk a bit more specifically about my research, and that's a bit different.
Yeah,
but
that's fine. No, talk about this.
because I don't know. I study feminist fans of science fiction, particularly Star Wars and Doctor Who. So and feminist female fans. So their experiences of being fans is mostly feeling like they're not being heard when they ask. For years they've been asking for a female doctor, and now they do have one, but for 55 years they did not, and they just felt like they're not being heard because nobody takes them seriously, whereas when male fans ask for something, eventually they will get it. So that's a different kind of who owns the fandom. So I don't know if you have those experiences when people expect to view some certain content, but I guess it also depends on who is asking from the fandom, because some fans have more power than others, and usually it's
Well, it's different because
male
sometimes,
fans.
Tatiana, you ask for people's opinions. You're like, oh, which one should I do next?
Yeah.
But then do you have people like demanding ever?
But then it's
like,
invited. It's a different.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
different situation. Inviting the opinions and stuff is that's then it then puts it on your fans. It's not that your fans are rowdy and you shout at them and go, okay, you can give your opinions to me now, and then I'll accept them. It's more just an open forum. I feel sure people suggested stuff to me, but I mean it's never I don't think I've ever had people who are no, if you don't do this, then it's over or whatever.
Well, then you,
It's
you
over.
lose
It's over.
one guy.
Unsubscribe, yeah.
well, actually, that's not entirely true, but I wouldn't say it's the same thing as fandom, because I have right now I have 30,000 subscribers, but really on every video I'm only getting about 3,000 views. So I have a 10% sort of ratio of people who actively watch my content, and most of those 3,000 views are within the first 2 days. So that's I get the majority of views. I get about 1,000 views in the first hour, and then it drops dramatically off. It goes 500, 200, 100, and then it stays around 100 for a few days, and that's every hour. So in terms of people who actually like my content, who are part of a fandom of mine, it's only about those people. Who are the other 90% of people watching me? They are only subscribed for a certain type of content that they liked. Most people subscribed me for the Reddit content. After I went on hiatus, they obviously just forgot, because it was during a time where the reason I grew so quickly was because Reddit was incredibly, incredibly popular. Every creator who was doing Reddit at the time grew massively. I was talking to a few of them at the same time, and for the first month we were doing it, it was oh, we're growing really slow. I'm only getting 10 subscribers every week, and then suddenly we're all okay, I've suddenly got 3,000 subscribers in a day, and I'm freaking out. So but they were only subscribed for a certain amount of content. When I went on hiatus and when I started coming back and started doing different videos because I wanted to expand my content, they didn't watch, and now they're unsubscribing because suddenly they're realizing my channel exists again. And most of them probably, it's not that the content's changed, it's that they've lost interest in the content. They were never part of a fandom of mine. It was just the content I was producing.
So why would you subscribe then? It's just people are fickle?
Because
Or-
the Reddit community is huge. There are at least, I would say, 150 active Reddit-producing YouTube channels. And what someone will do, and this is what I did as well, before I started doing YouTube and I was following a lot of these Reddit channels, I would subscribe to multiple of them. It didn't really matter who was reading them because at the end of the day, the content was just effectively an audiobook of funny things that they've seen on the internet. And then I'd subscribe to a bunch of these because then I'd get lots of these contents and most of them would all be different, some of them will be the same. And you can subscribe to a bunch of them. So that's why people subscribe to me, because they weren't just subscribing to me. They were subscribing to me. There's a channel called Illuminati, Fresh, Q-Star, Sorry TV.
I'll subscribe to that one.
Yeah. Comment, Slow TV, or I can't remember. There's but I can list off a bunch of them. And that's what they did. And now they've lost interest in the content. And that's fine. That's natural for a thing to do. That's why I want to get out of Reddit content. Because this happens in waves. A while ago on YouTube, like quite a while ago, so maybe 7, 8 years or something, animation used to be incredibly popular. It was the most popular brand, effectively. If you were doing short animations, you were at the top. Then the algorithm changed, and people stopped watching because they didn't get it recommended as much, and it died. If you make animation now on YouTube, unless you're incredibly, incredibly popular, you're screwed. Yeah, there's no way you can do it. And that happens to every type of content. So Reddit will start depleting, and every content will start depleting. So that's why they subscribe. It's just that they want that content now. Doesn't mean they want it later.
I think it's also the expectation, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The expectation you create with your audience. It's kind of like you have a relationship with your viewers, right? I don't know what kind of relationship that would be named, but you have a relationship with them because they pay your bills and you give them entertainment. And I think with any relationship, if you have a new boyfriend and you only show that you're cooking all the time, you're cleaning all the time, you're like having sex 4 times a day, then he's gonna expect that to be the real you, right? He's gonna expect that a year later still. Nobody can keep up with that. So I feel like if I make my viewers expect 8 hours of content every single day of the week and I can't keep up with that, then I made that expectation happen, and then they'll be upset if I'm not there. But if I'm kind of like irresponsible from the start and I don't have a schedule and I'm just sometimes there and sometimes not and they still subscribe, then I know they'll be there.
So when you set the bar low, then
I set
you
the bar
can't
low.
disappoint.
Yeah, and then
right?
when
You're
I'm there
like-
for a whole week, everyone's like, whoa, great.
And there are channels which work like that on YouTube. All
Yeah.
the time there are really, really popular, over 1 million, 2 million subscribers who just will
Fuck off,
upload
yeah.
once every 2 months.
Yeah.
Just chuck a video out there. But they'll be ridiculously popular videos. Like
Because
they,
people know what to expect.
Yeah, they expect
Yeah.
you to never upload and then
So,
randomly one day.
I
bang.
really enjoyed this. What I learned from all this research since February doing this panel is the freedom that you have in these channels. And what I wanted to ask Netta, and what we were talking about, remember when fandoms like changed the course of the actual written script of the art of a TV series or something? So my question to you, especially being Star Wars, is we're shipping Rey and Kylo Ren, and the producers and the writers see this. How does that affect the art of the original vision of the writers? And we had a long discussion about this.
Well, I don't know because I don't know how, I don't know the writers. I can give examples of, and sadly it's from my own fandom, when the writers do
Change.
when the writers do things on purpose in order to annoy the fans.
To annoy the fans.
Create
Okay.
a buzz.
Not even that. Well, it's the case of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for instance, which is my fandom, my biggest love in the world. Where in season 6, one of the major villains were the trio, and there were 3 geeky guys who really loved Star Wars and loved geeky things and science fiction, and they turned them into the villains. And that was kind of a way, at least that's what the fans read of it, is that is a way to discipline their own fans and tell them, look, this is how we see you, so you should tone it down a bit. And this happens in a lot of other shows whenever they have that fan girl. Usually it's always the same trope of someone who is very obsessive and very sexual and can see the difference between right or wrong. So a lot of shows do that in order to warn the fans to not be too extreme. Yeah.
What was the episode you were telling me? They changed the whole course. Was it a Doctor
Oh,
Who?
well, so interestingly, I feel like one of the people who's sort of the worst offender of this is Stephen Moffat of Doctor Who.
He loves it.
He loves to get input from the fans, and that's what's so different now in the internet age. It's interesting that you'd say that was with Buffy, because Buffy was kind of pre-internet. And so now, again, there's this instantaneous talk back to the producers of content. Where
the immediacy of the feedback.
Before, if you wanted to bring back, Star Trek, you had to write a letter, you had to send it in, and it would take a lot of effort. Now it's, you can go on Reddit, you can go on Facebook, you can go on any forum and say, oh, well, I really liked this, or I didn't like this. And so Stephen Moffat is kind of, again, one of the worst offenders. When he wrote in the seasons that Russell T Davies ran, he wrote Blink, which was one of the most popular episodes for people who were new to the show. And then when he took over the series, the entire story arc of the show was about that one thing.
He became a serious troll.
Yeah, he did. And this happens in a lot of media too, because it was the same thing with Westworld, the HBO series.
Which had a crazy fan episode.
Yeah, and so they had, when they started production on season 2, they realized that people on Reddit had figured out what the arc of season 2 was going to be. Completely went and rewrote the whole thing, changed it entirely because they didn't want fans to know. Same thing happened with Battlestar Galactica. They realized people figured out who the final 5 Cylons were, and were like, oh, we're going to do something different. But it completely changes the art and the arc of the show, because that's not where they started, that's not where they intended to go. And then they, as professional writers, rather than going in the direction that they went, that they had foreshadowed and done everything for, completely.
So this is a question then for the entire panel. So there's factions of fandom then as well. Remember we were talking about the true blue, don't change a thing, and then the fandoms that want to have their say in it and change the trajectory. Do you find factions within your fandoms or people, your followers, different factions?
I think so. Do you want to?
I think my audience is a bit too small, honestly, to see different factions. Obviously there's.
Yeah, but you have different demographics. You're all over.
Oh yeah, my demographics are hugely varied. I have an age range of between 18 and 45ish. That's sort of my bracket. Mostly 18, and then it goes lower and lower and up in the ages. But
and you're big with the lesbians.
And huge with the lesbians, yeah. A lot of lesbian viewers.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
They comment a lot.
Oh, okay.
they let them know.
I was like, is there a statistic in your Google overview?
Yes, that's a new one in YouTube. Yeah, you can now see how many lesbians you've got.
It's a good
They
metric.
love him. They're like, I'm questioning things now.
Yeah, but in terms of that, I'm not entirely sure there's many splits in content. I feel like there's obviously a crowd which wants just me to produce Reddit content because they really like the Reddit content. They were there for the Reddit content. But there's also a lot of them. Every time I say okay, I'm not doing as much Reddit anymore, there's a huge amount of people who are just yeah, but we'll stick around for whatever content you produce. And so it's always people are very relaxed with it, and I don't think that right now I'm large enough to have any divisions in faction. Obviously with a fandom like a TV show like Doctor Who or anything like this, there's millions and millions of fans from multiple different countries.
So what is your opinion on that?
Can we talk more shit about Stephen Moffat?
Let's
all day.
Brilliant. Can we just make this happen?
One thing I would venture to say really quickly is for both Shanna and Tatiana, it's a different type of content. So when you think about, the fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and the writers got really angry with them, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is this giant, it's a nebulous concept.
Right.
With Tatiana and Shanna, people would have to be lashing out at an individual person. And I imagine...
don't realize that. You know,
Well,
realize that
sure,
with
yeah.
people.
But I think that the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not a famous online person, I think that the way that they interact with you would be different.
Yeah, but it's also different between us because
Sure.
I'm live, so I have a chat that I read while I'm streaming, what I respond to, and then they see it like 30 seconds later. With you, it's comments after you've
After the
posted,
fact,
and
yeah.
you can read them, and they don't see your reaction instantly. For me, they already see my reaction.
So does that affect what you're doing? I couldn't even
Well,
read it if I was like
if
doing
I'm
something.
eating, I'm turning off my webcam. Because I don't want to eat there with 200 people like staring at my face. That's weird,
Although
right?
that
Like,
is
I feel
that's a very popular
That's
part
muk-
of Twitch.
mukbang.
Yeah, I was going to say you could get into that
Sorry,
market.
I mean,
No, but I get even when I'm eating, I get an increase in toxic people in my chat that call me fat or that call me like, yeah, or creepy people. They're like, "Can you take a bite while you look into the camera?" Stuff like that. Like I just
Then
turn
can you
off my
say yeah
webcam.
for $500?
No, well you could, but that's prostitution.
Isn't it?
which is
Is that?
No, but I do
form
have a
of-
very, very huge. Speaking of the divide in viewers, I do have a lot of groups that I can easily identify because it's a live thing, so I can instantly see what kind of people they are. Like after a month of a break, there's a certain core of people that are like, we would watch you whatever you do. We're just there for you and for each other, hanging out. And then there's people that only watch my music streams that don't care about games. Then there's people that only watch a certain game that I play. So it's I have a bunch of different groups, and I've kind of created that myself by doing so many different things, which is marketing-wise not very smart, because you kind of want to just stick to one game and build exponentially on the fandom of that game. But I just couldn't do the same thing for 6 years.
Right, you want to do what you love.
I have a new
right.
hobby every 2 months.
Right.
You know, like I'm just like, what's next? This is boring. Okay, next thing. I'm gonna knit on stream or whatever. Like I've done arm knitting, I've done cooking streams. Like I'm just so distracted all the time that I just need something else every few months. I just need a different impulse.
Yeah, but I think, to your point that you were saying, like when their content changes, I think that
Right.
if Westworld suddenly went from being, a Western sci-fi to a rom-com, people would lose their minds. But that's because it's this one giant nebulous concept whereas,
But
I'm sorry,
for
it
stuff
fits
like
into
Star
like a
Wars,
genre.
we have the like old school where we don't even like know even how to put our input.
Yeah. But,
You know,
but
like-
for them, they're watching the person, it's not, I watch this Reddit channel, although it sounds like there are some, but those are the ones that kind of come and go.
Yeah.
And so fandom, I think in that regard is different. You're
And
not,
coming back to constructed identities, because they think they're watching me, and they think they're watching. Well, for you, it's more clear that you are a character.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But for me, it really isn't. There's very blurry lines of where my personal life begins and where my channel begins.
Well, do you want to speak to that, Tatiana, about how much constructed identity you are?
Oh,
why did you create this character?
Well, like I didn't think about doing when I started doing it. I didn't think about doing YouTube for like a few months. Like I started like just generally cross-dressing for like back in July last year, and then I kind of just created an online personality. I picked Tatiana Pirogova as the name. I stole it from a book, and then I like just started doing it, and then I got to a point where I was quite happy with the way I looked. So like I was just developing it slowly over time. Like, I've got quite nice tits to be fair, but before I was just stuffing t-shirts down there. So, and I was wrapping them up with electrical tape and shoving them in there. So, but yeah. And then I got quite happy with the way I looked, and I thought, okay, I watched a lot of these Reddit channels. This is fairly easy content to do. You just read out a post and people laugh at the post that you didn't write. So that's fairly easy. And then I was watching these channels and like, I'll do something different as well. I'll put comedy in it, so I'll read the post and then I'll try my best to make a decent pre-written joke after it. And also the fact that I'm a cross-dresser and that's interesting to look at. So,
But then you would have a faction in your following, because do you have people that are like, oh, you helped me identify with my sexuality, and then you have people like me that just like your comedy? Because at the very beginning you would say, I'm a trap, and you would explain what a trap is, and now you're just do your thing.
now I just don't care. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
well,
there's different
I
people
mean,
that come to you for different reasons. Like, didn't you have people
Sure,
say
people-
thank you for helping
people
me
come to me-
explore my sexuality? Thank you for this.
But people come to me for different reasons, but it's not necessarily that they're part of different factions, my thing. Yeah, so some people come and comment and they say, oh, watching your videos really helped me sort of accept or come out or do whatever, because they like the fact that I was putting myself as a crossdresser online, which is a sort of still unusual thing. I was, although I hadn't done anything in public until literally last month, it still was kind of public because I was posting a video online. And sure, those people.
Well,
come
this
to
is
me and
technically your first public screening.
Yeah. So doing something like bigger with an audience. Yeah, this is the first time I've done something. But the first time I went outside was last month, after like a year of just being in my room, basically. And then, yeah, so some people come to me, but it's not like a division, because they don't just watch my videos for self-help, because I wouldn't watch my videos for self-help.
Clearly.
But they find that one aspect of my video helped them, and that's nice. But then I hope they'd stick around for the comedy I'm producing and everything like that. I hope they'd stick around for the entertainment value, not just I'm glad they gained one thing from it, but I'd like them to stick around. So yeah, I don't think there's that much of a division between the people that are coming to me for that sort of stuff. Do you want to talk more about why I crossdress, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about it?
It makes sense with the panel, constructed identities. So I started cross-dressing, then I started doing YouTube, and I really haven't changed my look that much since then. It's kind of, I started doing it mainly because I was just.
You wore different wigs.
Yeah, so for the first few videos, I switched between a blonde wig and a brown wig because I was still figuring out what I wanted to look like, and then I just stuck with the blonde wig mainly because of the audience was like, oh, I prefer this wig or I prefer this wig, and I was just like, okay, maybe I should just pick one and just stick with it because that way I'm not constantly confusing people. But yeah.
But really talk about, you used to introduce yourself. My name is not Tatiana.
Oh, not
Pirogova.
Tatiana.
My name is Tatiana Pirogova.
Yeah.
At what point?
Because the reason I stopped doing multiple wigs and the reason I started introducing myself as properly as Tatiana Pirogova is because it became a branding thing. After a certain point, I started taking YouTube seriously, and I thought, okay, I could actually do something with this. I could actually talk to a lot of people. I'd like to have some sort of brand I can sort of throw out there. So I stopped changing my wig. I kept blonde, and although I bought a new one, I kept it blonde. I normally always wear the opera gloves unless there's one outfit that I do. I always wear masks and sunglasses. I kept to a brand, and I stopped joking around with me oh, obviously I'm not actually called Tatiana Pirogova. I just started calling myself Tatiana Pirogova because I was a face to what I considered an entertainment channel on YouTube.
But do you feel more like yourself as Tatiana?
I think that I made her when I was in a weird place. So back in July, it was just after my first exams, and I knew that they didn't go as well as I had hoped. I was I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was completely redeciding whether I wanted to go study in university or what I even wanted to study in university, which is something really you should have picked before.
And the first line in your very first video, I'm dressed like a woman because I've lost complete control
of my life. And that was more of an actual cry for help at that point, because the first video I ever did was unscripted, completely unscripted. So everything in there was more just me venting. And of course no one was going to watch that video because the first video you post online never really takes off.
It's really funny because I've met a lot of content creators because I go to a lot of conventions of Twitch and YouTube people, and almost every person that I've met that has a channel and is making a living or trying to make a living off of it came from a really bad place.
Yeah.
I was in the dumps and then I made a channel, or I was feeling like shit and then I started doing this, or somebody died and then it's just everybody is coming from a place where they're absolutely as low as they can go, and then kind of as a way out started doing this, which is a really cool pattern to observe, I think, because it's helping.
Well,
a
and
lot
I
of
think
people.
that's what resonates with the people that are watching.
Yeah.
Because I was in the dumps when I discovered Tatiana. I hadn't laughed for 8 months.
Yeah.
And I found myself laughing again.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I discovered something amazing. And I think
I
that's
get
why.
letters from people, like, because you shared your mental health story, I decided not to kill myself that day or whatever. Like, I get letters that make me cry. And it's really important for me to keep being so open about how we feel, especially on the internet, because the anonymity can be a bad thing, but it can also be a really good thing when you're expressing emotions that are kind of hard to talk about. Like depression and mental health is for a lot of people still very much like a thing you don't talk about, or that is nobody's business. Or
So do you find stuff like that, Netta, in the science fiction, especially for women fandom, is that this is a space for us to go because it is so small population of women in science fiction?
Well, I don't want to sound quite negative, but not necessarily. Because again, like gaming, it's considered male-dominated community, so they usually feel like they don't have a space there, and that's why they have to create their own alternative communities or much smaller communities. And if speaking of things that they do online, they will never use a feminine pseudonym on Reddit or anything like that.
Really?
Yeah. Because
I
they,
don't talk in games because if they hear my voice and I'm a girl, I get harassed.
Yeah, that's what they
Really?
tell me.
This is
Have you
this
been
This
is-
is so strange to me.
Have you been on the internet?
this has been literally the last 20 years. This is
The thing is,
My name is my name on the internet. Like, I don't have a
50%.
handle, I don't have an avatar. It's like,
there's research that almost 51% of gamers are female.
Yeah.
Oh.
But they're
Right
still
now.
considered minority
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, they just aren't loud.
Yeah.
Because you just get, I don't know why, actually.
Do you ever feel like, or do people actually tell you, oh, you have followers just because
Oh,
you're a female and good looking,
every
not
day.
because you're a good
Every
gamer?
day.
same with Tatiana.
Oh, I hate it so much. Thank you for bringing that up. Oh, it triggers me so much. Well, I've been working my ass off for 6 years, so for somebody to say, oh, you're only successful because you're a girl and men are gamers and they want to watch a girl game.
But then you'll get somebody saying that same day you got 4 chins.
Yeah. Well, actually, as a girl,
You know what I
do-
mean?
do
Like,
think
what is this?
It's just discrediting entirely the amount of effort that goes into running an online channel in a very competitive space, because there's millions of channels. There's millions of YouTube channels. There's no way that just by being a girl you can get successful. You might get more clicks because you're a girl, but then once they click, you have to be entertaining, otherwise they're gone in 10 seconds. Like if you watch a YouTube video because somebody's good looking and they're actually an asshole, and after 10 seconds you'll know, right? You'll just be like, okay, I guess I'm watching something else. So it does maybe get more traffic in, but that's just quantity. And then you have to provide entertainment that gives them that is something like a magic number. If they watch for more than 5 minutes, they'll stay probably for longer. It's like the first 5 minutes are the most important part.
That's
of
really
who
weird
they're
because you
watching.
used to say that in your videos, Tatiana. If you've stayed the song, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
if
and
you
I
watch
thought that's so
past 5 minutes, you'll watch the
self-deprecating.
whole
Like,
thing.
you're not expecting people to watch the whole video.
Thing is though, it's not that I don't expect, it's that I know. Because I get the great thing with YouTube statistics is that I get the exact percentage of viewers for every second of my video.
Yeah.
I know the exact amount of people who have
What?
started the video, and I know the exact amount of people who have finished the video.
I can even see
That's
that for like 6-7 hour
freaky.
streams.
Yeah, for massive
It's like
streams as well.
basically
Twitch.
NSA.
Yeah. So
That's freaky.
so I even know if people have skipped a part of the video, because there'll be it will start going down and then there'll be a dip and then it will go straight and then it will go back
Can you
up
see if
again.
they've rewatched a part too?
Yes,
Like there's
because
that one where you rub
if-
your boobs. Like
So for
no, there is. He's like rubs his boobs in part, and people comment. They're like, "Ooh, Tatiana
people
just
comment,
touches boobs."
yeah, people comment every time I touch my boobs.
So the real question
man, I
is,
wish I did that.
did that get a bunch of rewatches?
Yeah, do you get rewatches from
Yeah,
touching
so
boobs?
if you see a little spike in your like things, it means that people have clicked back on that bit of the video. You also know if at the start of the video, if you look and it's over 100% of people who have started the video, it means that people have rewatched the video, which is always nice to
So
see.
you can tell who's rewatched it.
I can tell.
Because sometimes I feel
yeah.
bad for you. I'm like, let me watch this a bunch of
You
times
can't
so he
see
gets
who
more.
it is, right?
Oh,
You
so
can't
now I-
say
I'm-
you can't say who it is, but you know that at least some people, and you can know the exact percentage of people who have
Yeah.
rewatched the video.
Yeah, the statistics are, I don't look at them very often because it stresses me out. Because sometimes you see like, oh, when I don't sing and I play this and this game, my view count drops 50%. And then, but I really love that game, you know, and I shouldn't care about that. Like, I should care about what I'm doing is fun to me. And then if it's fun to you, people will come. People will take that energy and feel it and be like, okay, she's having a hell of a lot of fun here. I'm going to keep watching even though I don't enjoy this game. So I think it's very hard to stick true to yourself and not get lost in the numbers. And you're like, this content works really well. Like Fortnite, for instance. Fortnite works really well right now. There's thousands and thousands of viewers that watch Fortnite every
I
single day.
don't know what Fortnite is.
It's a new
video
game. I don't like the game. It would be a smart move for me, business-wise.
Centipede.
Yeah, like Tetris.
It's like
Tetris,
Coronado
Tetris
Mall,
is coming
1984.
back.
Oh yeah.
It is
whole
Tetris
multiplayer
is
Tetris.
really,
Oh,
really
the-
popular right now. But I don't enjoy Tetris. So then do I play it to get more viewers and I'm just going to sit there like, oh, I hate my life right now? Or do I play something completely different that nobody knows about?
Okay, so here's my question to you. Being Gen Xer, let's be the devil's advocate. So why would I sit and play a game with you online when I could go out?
Oh my god, this is like
Then
having a
don't.
conversation
In
with
real
my
life.
mum.
Yes,
Holy
exactly.
shit.
Like, oh, why would you watch somebody play football and not play it
And
yourself?
not
Oh,
play
I'm the same way. I'd rather go to a live sports event.
Yeah.
You can go to live gaming events.
And you can go watch someone. It's
There's arenas
Yeah.
with thousands of people cheering for their favorite Counter-Strike team that are just playing games.
Oh, Netta has something to say about
And
that.
some people, it used to be actually more common. I had interviewees who were about between 19 to 55. So the older ones said that actually they really like being online because when they were teenagers, they didn't know any other fans. They couldn't communicate with other fans and share their passions. So if you're a gamer and you don't know other gamers, how else are you gonna, share it with people? You'll watch people online, you'll join communities, because then you will feel alone if you don't have that. So
here's my question to you, Laura. We're going to talk about this then. In some cases, this can both be liberating, but it also can be debilitating if you already have that natural tendency to be introverted. If you want to comment on that.
I think so. Well, and the interesting thing is to harken back to something Stephen Trask said earlier is when we were talking about the live symphonies playing at the movie theater. He said, well, why would you go to the theater? And I think the thing is our society is shifting in such a way that like it has to be something really exceptional, something really exciting, something really postable, so to get you out of the house because everything can come to you. You can have your food come to you. I mean, you could have that before, but pizza is magic though. It only comes to you sometimes. But you can
With boxes in.
but you can, you have your entertainment, you have basically your friends. Like I think a lot of times with content creators like you guys, that is friends for people, but it's almost like a one-way friendship. Although it sounds like Shanna with you, it's a little more instantaneous. People can actually talk to you and respond back.
I have met some of them. There are some of them that come from my community that I now consider my friends.
Yeah.
But there's also like 99% of them that I don't, that I
associate with.
I don't know. Like I don't not care because I do care.
But you want to keep that delineation, right?
Yeah, like it's very double because they're my income. They're my source of income. So I have to in some way care about how they feel. But I also am a little bit afraid of them because if I do something wrong, then they might leave. So there's this whole double feeling of I kind of need you, but I also want to stay true to what I'm doing. So that's a very double kind of sentiment, I think.
And then you can't like really be their friend in real life if you didn't.
Because I don't know who they are. Yeah.
Donna really
And they will always put you on a
Oh,
pedestal.
Donna's jumping up and down. Donna, yes. Please.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions.
Yes. But let's have a discussion. Yes, let's keep going.
The first one is I'm a mother of two, and I am watching my boys grow up in this online arena, and they are socially interacting with their friends in games, just like you described. It's like a whole new thing. Being a Gen Xer myself, I also see that it's very antisocial and that like I want them to have balance between living in the real world as well as online. I want them to have a childhood. Like, I mean, I had analog childhood. I didn't.
Analog childhood.
Yeah, and I only really like came into the the digital world in my teens, and so for me, I'm like it's so important. I
We're sitting here like.
have that balance.
Oh gosh.
So I'm really keen, I guess, to hear your advice
for parenting or for?
So we don't have any advice for that.
Apart from it, but I think it's you learn as you go.
Yeah.
But I think you obviously have experienced being
In both.
living in this way as an adult.
I think that's how I feel, Donna. I feel kind of left out. Like, as a Gen Xer, I don't know how to be a part of that.
But I'm also concerned, so I guess that, like, I don't know, do you have any advice, that I could take on board? And secondly, what is your vision for the future? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Like, where is this going?
Yeah. What's the end game here?
So I guess I'm posing that question to all of you because you're all coming from different
I think it's
places.
very hard term to say the real world, because I think that gaming is also part of the real world. Even a lot of companies use gamification to get people into proper training or to get people to do certain tasks. So I feel like there's definitely a lot of benefits to starting gaming as a kid, because you learn to communicate. Because you are playing a team game, you have to build something with 5 people or something. You're learning to kind of delegate tasks. You're learning to be a part of something like a team. You're learning to solve problems. And technology is also very good to learn about early on, I think. Because if you have to learn how an iPad works at 10 years old, it's easier than when you're 50. Like, my nephew is better with a computer than me, and I built them. Like, it's just really strange how, like, they pick it up so fast. So I feel like there's a lot of benefits to being in a digital world. They're also connecting with their friends.
Yeah. They're literally connecting with people, like, in their school with them, as well as people internationally.
But then you go out and you go to a convention of the game that you're playing, and you meet other people in person, or you're at school talking about that game last night with your friends. Like, it also kind of creates this special bond that you can only get through achieving a goal together, if that makes sense.
For I'd say for the last maybe 10, but even slightly longer than that. I mean, been doing it since maybe I was 9 or 10 years old or something. It's I've basically communicated with my friends online, but they're real friends. They're real friends from my school and everything. But it means that basically I'll go to school with them. I'll hang out with them in real life. We'll communicate in real life. We'll do things in real life. It's all that. I'll go home and then I'll immediately start communicating with them again. It's not that they're being antisocial by
it's not either or.
They're not coming home after school and locking themselves in their room and being alone for the entire time and only being forced to go see real people at school. They're still communicating with their friends. In fact, I'd argue that I'd spent a lot more time being social because of the amount of time I spent talking to my friends online. I would spend, after school, I'd spend 8 hours just talking to my friends, and we'd just talk stuff, and we'd play games together, and we'd interact, and that's how we spent, our childhoods, basically. And although it's, not, coming home after school and then going outside, and then doing stuff outside, you're interacting with people still. It's not antisocial.
Do you think there's a healthy middle, though?
Yeah.
I've had both.
Eye-to-eye contact and touch and...
Well, that's what I brought up the Jillian Michaels clip because she's a physical, she's a trainer.
Fear-mongering.
Yeah.
The fear-mongering.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay,
Maybe
wait,
we
we
just
need some
start
order here,
shouting,
Are you done, Donna, with your point?
Can
Wait,
I
but
answer
we-
her?
Yes, please, we're still
Sorry.
on Donna's point. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just
Here's the
I felt
talking
urge.
straw.
I am 32. When I grew up, the internet just started, let's say. But my entire childhood, I watched television. I loved watching television. I sat in front of the television for hours. And I think back then, you can tell me, I think that was considered like the evil machine that's gonna ruin children's minds. And I'm making hopefully a career out of it today. And and my friendships were formed based on the content that I enjoyed watching. And I think that's kind of similar to online communities
I would
now.
also argue, though, you can turn the TV. My mom would turn the TV off, go outside. This
nobody
goes
did that
with
to
you.
me.
We had a
This goes with
PlayStation,
you.
But then
This
you
goes
just
with
don't
you.
give your kid a smartphone.
That's the obvious.
I
mean,
I
they're not going to
hate
be...
those kids that are 8 and sit in a train with an iPad. Like, look at the window. I hate them too.
Yeah.
I-
But their parents don't know because we didn't grow up with internet literacy. So we're like, oh, my kid's on the phone.
But
He's
that's
smart.
not parenting.
And so
That's just like, oh, I don't want to deal with my kid. Here's an iPad.
Well, yeah, it's a babysitter now. So
It's
let's
just
talk about
bad.
the.
Well, so all I was going to say to Donna's point as well is that I think some of the anxiety that comes from our generation about this is kids that are growing up now. So like Donna's kids, my kids, they're the first digital native generation. So like even, people in your generation, you didn't get your first iPad until you were probably your iPhone until you were, maybe like a young teenager or something like that, close to that. The kids that are growing up now, they do grow up with iPads in their hands because like that's the thing that's available.
Compulsory in primary school.
Yeah. And so I think the other thing too is,
I had to buy them like tablets for primary school.
Okay,
how they
that's-
do
Yeah.
their
Well, are you sure
Yeah.
your kid doesn't just come home and say, oh,
Yeah.
well, you have to buy us
Yeah.
an iPad or otherwise we're not allowed in school anymore. So,
but I think the other thing is this technological leap with smartphones and video games and everything was so much more of a massive leap than our parents had to deal with. Like there was
Right.
television, but they had television. And so I think people
And
on our
records,
end of the
like,
spectrum are seeing something entirely new coming in, and we have to trust
pace
the
of it.
younger
Yeah,
generation
right.
to kind of tell us what's right, which is where when you were talking about like digital literacy and stuff like that, I think that is something that's really important and a discussion that needs to be had more than it's being had right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, as someone who studies computer science and hopes to be a computer scientist, I can tell you a huge part of my degree has been learning about the ethics of what you're putting in a computer program. So, for instance, we were talking about the game Fortnite earlier, and there are lots of cases of kids like basically taking their parents' credit card information and using it on this game and spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds or dollars or whatever on these in-game items and things. And there's the whole question of like whether that should be available to them. And I think there does.
How
need
did
to
they
be
get their
some
parents'
sort
credit cards?
because
Well,
they
sometimes
ask,
they'll even just be in
Mom,
the-
I want to get this thing in the game, and then the
I
parents.
think
are
a
like,
big part of it is
Well, the
parenting.
parents
Yeah,
gave their
exactly.
kid a credit
Yeah.
card. Like,
Yeah.
what do you expect?
Exactly, but the kids are manipulative as hell.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. Like, yeah.
But they're fully forming their own identities online at such a young age. And like they are even like my sons, for example, they're forming packs. And they go into a game as a pack and they'll spread out and they'll like suss out the whole environment and they'll be talking to each other like on
And they'll
video.
probably still be friends
Isn't
in
that
15
beautiful?
Yeah. But
Like my mind's blowing.
Yeah.
They're looking after
Yeah,
I'm kind of
exactly.
scared shitless of that. Leonard, you've been waiting. Your arm has been up.
I would draw a different distinction, not the real world and the digital world. I'm going to call it the sensual world, the real world, because I want to get back to that, what was said, that a baby needs to be hugged.
Right.
And in advance, because I know there's many different cultures in this room. So I'm from Germany, so we are sexually outspoken. If this offends you, I'm sorry, that's not what I mean. But what this whole thing boils down to me is, will people still have sex and cuddle and hug each other?
Well,
Because
okay.
I think
What
we
was that
need
study done? Like the millennial generation is having less sex. Bill Maher did a whole thing on that too. Like,
Less sex or less kids?
Yeah.
Because that's a big
no,
difference.
it was less like
About
sex.
cuddling,
Although-
sensual
If-
experience,
if you
not
look-
having babies.
Just physical love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look
Physical
at
touch.
media throughout the ages, that has always been an anxiety about changing cultures. Think about Brave New World. In Brave New World, there's this whole idea of like what sex is going to become, and
Even
stuff like that.
1984.
Exactly. And so I think that like every time there's a massive shift in culture, there are all these things that everyone panics about. Like, are we going to have sex? Are we going to talk to each other? Are we all going to blow ourselves up? Like,
the two main issues.
I do think so, because I think for every movement so far in history, there's always been an anti-movement. Even when there was
a
like
backlash,
hippies
yeah.
and stuff, and then in the 90s, it was kind of like an anti-movement against the hippies. Then now I feel like when our generation becomes so digitalized, I think there's afterwards going to be
Well, I
a
am
new
sort of
generation.
doing an anti-movement.
Yeah,
I
like
just-
there's going to be people
yes,
that...
but
I
I
am-
don't know if everybody's a cyborg.
I think that there's going to be an
wanking off
anti-movement.
alone
Yeah.
in the park.
Yeah. It's only...
Very sensual, but it is a bit lonely.
It's only natural.
Well, we'll talk later about the transhumanist movement because I'm big
stay
on
away from
that.
parks in Germany.
Sensual, it's lonely.
Well, there's this picture I always remember when I think about this. When I was reading something about it, and there was this picture of a train carriage, and it was just as newspapers started to become really
I've seen
printed
that too, and
and
everyone's
put
like this.
into train stations. And there was this picture of just people talking on a train, and there's everyone was reading a newspaper. And it was the exact same thing. As soon as newspapers came into major population in train stations and stuff, people started panicking. They were like, we don't talk to each other anymore. No one's going to speak. They're just going to read these pieces of paper. Disgusting. And that's what people were worried about. They were worried about... And today, though, if someone said to you, oh, why are you reading something on an iPad? Why don't you read, like, a book or a newspaper? But it's the exact
Right,
same
you can
thing.
still ignore somebody, like in every like movie where a couple, like in Citizen Kane, the famous scene where at the very end they're just reading a paper at the breakfast table.
But-
Same concept.
But if you think of even like one of your favorite episodes of The Twilight Zones that we talked about with Burgess Meredith, Time Enough at Last,
right.
when he's reading, that's stigmatized. Everybody thinks he's an egghead, he's wasting his life reading books. Nobody would think that now. You see somebody reading a book, and what do you say? Oh, an intellectual. So it's like there's always going to be that shift.
Giving it into a newspaper, whereas online's ongoing.
I really agree with that.
Yeah.
And
It's
there is
so vast. It's a frontier that is
boundaries.
endless.
Yeah,
The
that's
newspaper is done at some
Yeah.
point, but your phone is Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram. And
But that's a
another
choice.
newspaper.
and you like. Oh, I've heard someone.
But it's a
discuss it.
choice that I think that we haven't, that the technology is superseding our capacity to deal with it. Like the technology is going further than our ability to have the ethics or the literacy or the know-how to deal with
I
it.
agree, because bringing it all the way back to YouTube, the main goal of the site discussed privately, basically, with engineers of the site and management of the site, is that the goal of YouTube is to keep people
Right,
on the
right,
website for
right.
as long as possible. Videos are suggested to you all the times. The algorithm is designed to suggest you videos that you will like. Videos that not just videos that are related to the video you're currently watching. It takes your entire history, entire back history of things you've ever watched, and it boils your personality down into a number
It's
and
designed
assigns
to
you
keep you
a
addicted.
video.
Well, and I
It's
think
designed
that goes back to what Will was saying about ethics. I think that the technology is developing faster than the ethics are.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
That's like the sort of the dark
They will be
magic
there
of
though,
Yeah.
just like with cigarettes.
it. Yeah.
Like
You can always just stop.
It's a choice. So you're saying it's human
no,
will,
I'm saying
right?
they put
Right.
additives in it unnecessarily to keep the industry going, which is the same they do with
Oh, food and
algorithms.
sugar.
Yeah.
Putting sugar in
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point of this panel, is we're trying to be more literate about it. We had more. Somebody was talking
Evie
about
was
something.
raising her hand for a long time.
Yes, RG.
No,
Oh, Evie. Okay.
It was just about the discussion before about the gaming world versus the real world. I just wondered what you guys' point of view was on like games like Pokemon Go, where those two things are kind of fused.
I really like that.
Yeah, I believe that's because that's a fairly new thing. I believe we haven't really seen what it can do, but I do believe, for example, when I was
Please first describe what Pokemon Go is.
okay,
Augmented reality.
augmented
I'm
reality.
not even kidding.
So you get your phone out and you walk around the
Was that
real
the scavenger hunt thing?
and
You
effectively
gotta find stuff.
and it on basically effectively like a Google
I
map.
got a festival to run. I don't got time for this shit.
Effectively, you get a Google map, and then every now and again a Pokemon will appear on that map.
Do you know what Pokemon are?
A small
you
animal.
know, small.
Fate.
It's like those cards, those trading cards.
Okay.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we just keep going down until we just get to it's an animal? Right?
Okay, but let me
Appears
just
on our
ask
screen.
why.
And then you capture
And then
it.
you
And
have-
gotta,
you have to
the trick is
physically
you gotta
walk
catch
to
them
it.
all.
Yeah.
You have to walk there
Gotta catch
and you do something with your phone
Yeah.
and you catch it.
Why?
Anyway, it's a game. It's a game that gamifies
This
your
has gotten away
experience in
from
the real
us.
world.
Okay.
But I really enjoy it. I don't like Pokemon that much, but I walked 40 kilometers in the first week it came out.
Yeah.
Ah.
Like it makes me walk.
Oh,
I
geocaching's
don't leave
great.
the house normally.
Geocaching is
Yeah.
another one that a lot of people get hooked
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
It's,
And it wasn't Pokemon Go, but me and my friends used to play a game called Ingress, which was
It's the same.
It's the exact
Yeah.
same thing. You have portals, and there were 2 teams, and you had to capture these portals, and you were constantly fighting. So in our just tiny town, each portal was basically a Wikipedia page of whatever thing it was. So, for example, there was we never really explored our town, Worthing, because it's a tiny town. We thought nothing was in it, and we just walked down the road and we found a tree called the zombie tree, which apparently used to have people dancing around it during like a summer fair, because they believed it would raise the dead. Something we thought never existed in our town, and we found tons of these things. And augmented reality games really do they benefit your health, because you do go walk around while playing these games. There's active competition. You're communicating with your friends.
You meet
also
people.
And you meet
also
people.
get some weird social interactions. Like once
Yeah.
we were in town and
Oh.
we were fighting over this
Oh, yeah.
portal in this game, and we were like, let's cross the way, like, that fucker in that car.
Yeah, I would
going like, hey, screw you, man.
But what if he wasn't? Then you get beat up.
We could tell because we could see it.
Yeah,
on his
we
phone.
could
Like,
see
he
it
went
changing.
like-
And once we walked down a pier and we got all the portals, we walked back and we saw this group of like kids with their phones out, and we were just like, our portals are about to get hacked here. And they did, and we were just like, yeah, son of a
I have to
bitch.
say with Pokemon Go, I went on a night of drinking in bars because there was a Pikachu around the corner and people wanted to have it. And we just like it sounds so stupid, but I was like walking and there was like a Pikachu and I was like, oh, I guess I want a Pikachu. And then there's like 4 other people with their phones on power banks that are standing there like, what's up? You had this
I have
Pikachu
no
yet?
idea
You
what a
know?
Pikachu is.
And then we just went to go out for drinks.
It's a rat,
It's
basically.
a rat. It's a yellow rat that electrocutes people.
It's a Pokemon.
Amy has a question.
So actually, yeah, I wanted to shift focus just a little bit and ask a question for Netta, because I do think that the experience of how one expresses themselves in fandom is very interesting and not well understood. So I'm very excited about your research. And in learning a bit more about you, one of the things I kind of heard and identified was that fandom for women isn't always a positive experience. And so I'm going to flip that on its head and actually ask the question of how has it been a positive experience for women? Why do women get so connected into these worlds of fandom where they create these communities of fandom? Why do you think that is powerful for those women as a medium for their self-expression?
Yeah. Well, my research is about feminism and fandom, so it connects in my research. So some of the people that I interviewed, they became feminists because of their fandom. One example is because they were inspired by the characters that they saw. A lot of people who were inspired by Princess Leia. May she rest in peace.
All right, no way. Let's
Sorry, no, Carrie Fisher.
I wonder what's up with the next film. Like, do you know how much footage was shot before?
I don't know. People say we're gonna like it. That's what they said.
We're gonna like
but
it?
I hated the previous movie, so I don't know.
But does that ruin the plot? Like, do people go in these rooms and then, like, oh, Rey is an Obi-Wan, she's a Skywalker. Like, I feel like there's too much, like, information that it's just, I don't want to know till I see the film.
Yeah. The
What
new
about
ones are not
Obi-Wan?
great.
I said I've never seen Star Wars.
Well, now this is our territory, Pokemon, Pikachus. Let's talk some Leia.
Right, cool. I'm gonna go pee. Is that okay?
Yeah, you can go.
I'll talk about Star Wars for a bit.
Just talk about Star Wars and Doctor Who.
So Princess Leia is amazing, and she inspired a lot of the people that I interviewed to become feminists. Some of them even went and studied politics and started working
Really?
in politics because of Princess Leia.
And not just Princess Leia, but would you say that whole? Because for me, it was also Wonder Woman. It was Aaron Grant, Buck Rogers. There was a whole slew of women in the late '70s, early '80s that we grew up with. Charlie's Angels. Would you say that that specific era, or just that one specific character?
And well, I interviewed women from different age groups. So the older ones, because we spoke mostly about Doctor Who and Star Wars, so they talked mostly about Princess Leia and Sarah Jane from Doctor Who, who were their major influences. Sarah Jane was a journalist, and again, a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but some of them wanted to become journalists because of her. So that was one motivation. The other ones, in terms of just the positive experiences of being a fan, as we've talked about here, is the community and finding like-minded people, and knowing that you're not alone in this experience, that there are other people who enjoy the same thing as you. And again, to relate that to feminism, I had even people telling me that they learned about feminism or just learned new things that they weren't exposed to just because of their fandom communities. I had interviewees from Northern Ireland who talked about how they've never heard anything about like people who are against abortions and why maybe you should be or shouldn't be against abortions. And they learned about all these things online from fandom communities, and it's something that they didn't really grew up in that kind of environment.
So the topic would be Star Wars, but then they
But
can
then-
veer off onto other.
Yeah, and I had people telling me, again, if I talk about Star Wars, we didn't talk too much about Queen Amidala because that trilogy is kind of boring.
Well, yeah, it's like
But I had someone who told me
Amidala is.
what a great experience of an abusive relationship at the end of the day. And okay, you see that in the movie, and then you refine your critique against it. And then when something like that happens in real life, when people think, oh, that's a nice relationship, but they don't really see that it's abusive, then you can use the same kind of rationale that you used for Queen Amidala in real life as well. So that's a nice platform to sharpen your critique.
Kind of like a live journaling or like live diary, like a stream of consciousness, but with other people.
Yeah, feminism, in the feminist movement in the 70s, there was something called consciousness raising, and it was basically when women met physically together and talked about their lives, and then they realized, oh, we share the same challenges. It's not just me. Maybe it's a social thing, not a personal thing. And that's what fandom does sometimes. You meet online or offline, and then you realize, no, it's not just me, and we share the same struggles or the same ideas, and that brings stuff to your consciousness, basically.
Okay. Yeah, you were, yes.
I find it fascinating, and this is for sure like Shanna and Tatiana. Shanna, you know how you say how like 51% of gamers are female, but they can't say anything? But here's Tatiana, who's taking on a persona of a feminine character, and if anything, has an even bigger stage. So I find that kind of dichotomy interesting, that as a woman on a gamer website, she's to shut up and not allow her femininity to come out. But
Right.
Tatiana, who if anything feels freer.
Right. Isn't that kind of ironic?
That's what, yeah. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's just a different stage. So, for example, the gaming is more of a community. There's a lot of people who are gamers, and it is a male-dominated world. It always has been, and there's a lot of arseholes in the gaming community.
But people still think you're a female, though. Sometimes you get that asked all the time.
Yeah, until I start speaking. But that's not the same thing, because they're not coming to me for gaming, and that's the thing. The majority of my audience is female. Whereas I assume like probably the majority of your audience is probably male, because you do 97%. Mine's 75% female.
Even though I'm not even sexualizing anything.
Right,
Like
right,
I
right.
stream like probably even more covered than this. Like a t-shirt makes me uncomfortable. I sit in like a big sweater kind of like playing games. So there are women on Twitch that sexualize their brand as well. That sit there with a push-up bra playing games all day.
Yeah.
They make a fuck ton of money. But, you know, my mom watches my channel, and also I don't want to, you know, use my physical, but I don't know. I don't want to use that to monetary advantage.
So I guess as I'm listening, and because I have the same stance as you do with what the heck's going on the internet and stuff. And I'm 32. So it poses the question, though, and we've talked about this before, is the technology, and I don't even think it's so much the technology as the humans, but I'll just say, is the technology possibly taking us to a path where we're evolving into more cyborg computer and less organic beings? Now, I do believe in fusion, and I do believe both can exist. However, I think coming full circle, it all has to go back to our organic selves and our own identities. So we're creating these constructed identities, right? And we're putting ourselves online. I'm a gamer, I cross-dress, I identify with this group of movies, so on and so, genres, right? So why is it that we as humans need to wear so many identities? And then we're now the technology is distracting us into this cultivation of, well, since you're in this identity, now watch this, now watch that to fit more of that suited particular identity.
So you're thinking like ups the ante almost.
Yes, I think it's part of the AI experience of actually deconstructing the organic self and programming yourself into more of these more and more and more and more.
That's the part that gives me anxiety, I think. That's the part that I feel is overwhelming.
Yeah, we have control over that. Like, even, there's been studies for me, because I'm bilingual. Dutch is my first language. I'm a different person when I speak English. Like, even with something as simple as language, you get identified, if that makes sense. So you can use your Facebook to identify yourself, but that's you doing that. Like, it's not like anyone or any machine is making you do these things online. You have full control over what you put on there, what you watch. It's not like you have, like, it's not like the geese that they use for the livers. Like, somebody has like a funnel down your throat and it's like, you have to watch all these makeup videos. Like, you can just go and watch something else if you.
I agree with you. So
have
Right,
to search
but
for
I
it.
would argue though, not everybody is as sophisticated as you, Shauna.
But that's why we need to teach people how to use the internet and what to take seriously and what to doubt, because there's so much we should be doubting when we get fed information online.
But I think culturally,
But we're
I
not.
mean, Mandy and I have had this discussion. I think culturally we're at a point where we're kind of exhausted, especially in our, in the States.
I don't
with
want to
just
say the word fake news, but a lot of the
Right,
internet
right,
is
it's-
framed.
Yeah.
And it's even worse on the internet because you don't have to be a credible news source at all. You can just spew something on Twitter.
Right, like we were talking about newspapers also have editors.
Yeah.
Newspapers also have content.
Yeah,
that
well,
is-
and really quickly to Mandy's point, I think part of the thing is that we forget that, like, all identities are constructed. Everything that we attach to ourselves is something that we've created. Like you said earlier, I'm going to ask a very German question. Yeah, and so that's something that you identify yourself as. Like, Germany is a concept, it's a landmass, but it's also a country and it has a certain set of ideals. And so when you say that, we all accept,
Maybe, maybe I'm just being a naughty bastard. Saying I'm German, so everybody will excuse me.
But
Although,
but
I do that consciously.
I'm American, I'm a loudmouth.
Yeah.
Like,
But I think the thing is that we've always had constructed identities. It's just never been so performative.
right, and
Yeah, because when you used to sit around and think about, well, who am I? Because, I mean, identity crisis has been a thing forever. Now you have to do it online. You have to do it in front of everyone.
Yeah, I think actually to me, listening to all that, I mean, I can choose how I present myself with the way I dress, with the way I speak.
Right.
You can practice things, and these things will have a dynamic, and people will treat me differently. I think all this you're saying is really no different from the way things have always been. But there is one crucial difference that was mentioned, and that's the one I want to get back to, the robot god.
So I actually had a point on that really quickly.
All right, let me write that down.
So really quickly, I did want to make one point to that as a broadcaster coming from the old age of media, is that so when they talk about analytics and when they talk about what they can see and what their demographic is and stuff like that, it all sounds very scary unless you're coming from a perspective of what entertainment hasn't always been, at least in the broadcast age. We look at that stuff in television all the time. We look at those kinds of things. We look at demographics. We look at who's watching, how long they're watching, what they're watching.
So Nielsen ratings.
Yeah, and the Arbitron ratings. And so the thing is now it's automated. Like, we've come up with a technology that does that faster and more efficiently. It sounds scary because it's like, oh, they're watching us. We've kind of always been watched, just in a different way. And so now that it's shifting to individual content creators, they can look at that on a micro level, whereas we look at that on a macro level. Like, I work at a station, so there are hundreds of people looking at these things and dealing with these things. And now it's getting down to a smaller level, and I think that makes it feel more personal to people. And it makes it feel less personal to people in the sense that it's a robot instead of a person compiling the data. But I think, again, it's that anxiety of a shifting culture. I don't think that it's necessarily that different than what we've experienced before. It's just different enough to make us
anxiety for me is that
scared.
it's happening so quickly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not keeping up with it.
I mean, it looks at more of what you do. Like, it used to just be they just look at what you bought on television, or they just look at what you bought with your bank card. But I think for every technology that you accept to make your life easier, you're giving away a little piece of that kind of perceived freedom. Because they'll read your bank card statement. They know what kind of products you buy, and they'll advertise those to you if it's connected to your, internet account. So.
They have now the machines in the superstores, they actually know that you like this. Like
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
it tells
Yeah.
you that you have a discount on this.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll
Well,
buy
but
one
it's
at-
kind of scary. You're writing an email to your friend. Oh, I'm going to go to Hawaii and rent a car, and then the next thing that comes up is an ad for rent a car.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that.
I think the difference is that a human being, even if there's a human being that has all this data about everyone, it's still a human being that can be reasoned with. Even if it's super monetary, you can look in the eye and say, look, from person to person, can we stop this bullshit or something like that?
Right.
But I cannot tell that to a machine.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like
Well,
the
I mean,
director,
that's
the director of your television company
Yeah.
that's still a person.
Well, and again, I mean, I think these are anxieties that people have had for a long time because Isaac Asimov talked about that with,
Or maybe they
robotics
had them
and.
because they're reasonable.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you.
Just because many people ask that question doesn't mean it's.
But if you don't want people using that data, why do you still use the websites?
You have to though, right?
It's almost
A
to a point where
necessary
we
evil.
have to.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
not. It makes
Yeah,
Like you
he
don't.
lives
no,
off the
like,
grid.
I think most the older generation still has Facebook.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, but okay, this is kind of where I wanted to conclude, because we're headed toward the conclusion of this panel, was where the end game was. And we've got a lot of submissions, and we like films that comment on the zeitgeist. That's part of what we do, and that's why we chose this theme. Where we're headed with this, right? So there's definitely factions of people that are choosing to live off the grid, choosing to live organically, having, communal experiences, offline experiences. Where's Irma?
It's the anti-movement.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have a great documentary tomorrow about a man that chooses to live this way. So there are people that are choosing to go offline, but is there an in-between? Because to me, that's where my paradox comes in. That's where my anxiety comes in, is that I feel like I have to, I didn't want to get a laptop. Finally, I had to concede. I didn't want to get one of these. Finally, I had to concede. At what point do we have to put chips in our bodies? So where are we, where is the end game of this online identity, online culture? And keeping our organic identity and ourselves and our privacy, where we have to, have these ethical questions, and we get to make those decisions. Because, I had a job where they're like, "Do you have a laptop?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, you don't have the job." So at what point, do we have to, make these concessions? Because you say we have this choice, but our culture is developing at a rate where do we have these choices? Right.
Yeah, but if you had to choose to either not have any digital means whatsoever and just be your organic, true kind of.
I don't want to
nature
camp for 30
self.
years for the rest of my
Or-
life, I
or
don't.
have everything. Why not though?
What a Pokemon is.
Aren't you happier when you haven't checked your phone all day? I am.
Well, running the film festival, I'm not gonna lie, I get cyber anxiety. If I go out with my dad for go out on the lake for 2 hours and then I come back and then I have 100 emails, I get anxiety. But if I'm like, oh, I'm on it. So every email that comes in, I got it.
But then you're never experiencing anything.
And that's what's giving my generation, I feel,
That's
has
why
that
we need to be
anxiety.
taught, because what I do is I check my email in the morning when I wake up. I reply to everything, then I check it again at night. And the rest of the day, if I get a pop-up from an email, I'm like, I'm doing this tonight at 8 p.m. So then I know I'm getting it done on time.
Well, you
for
need
not-
to teach a class on ethical discipline
But
online,
I had to
because
learn this. This is
yeah.
why I was like, I've had.
But I don't think
2
the children
burnouts.
today are getting this. I think to Donna's point, are we teaching these in school? It's just like, oh, my baby's crying, and you see families at dinner, and they're just like watching a iPad
But that's
and a
ridiculous
movie.
to me, and it's my job to be on the internet.
But
Yeah.
they will
I
have
mean,
other skills that we don't have
Yeah.
very well.
But I also think that we're figuring it out differently in different places. I've noticed just coming here, I've had to accept, from every website I go to, I have to accept cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the US, you don't.
Right,
everything
right.
is- you either, it's a setting in your browser, you've either allowed it or not allowed it. But in order to go onto sites here, you literally are saying, yes, I give you the permission to track me.
Yeah. And if you say no, you can still use the website.
Right.
Which is great.
And so what I'm seeing is that, I think in different areas of the world, we're figuring out different ways to limit the way that technologies are tracking us. And some of them will work, and some of them will fall away, and some of them won't. But I think when we're looking about where we're going, we also would want to think about how is it being regulated, and how will it be regulated going forward.
Oh, and that's how we're ending our constructed identity panel. I'd like to thank our guests. Amazing discussion. We've recorded this, so we're going to get this online. Thank you guys so very much. We have the party at the Eye. Thank you so much. This has been my baby. No, this has been a personal journey for me, so I really, this has been amazing that you guys were all here for this. So the party starts at the Eye Museum, at the Eye Lounge, which is downstairs. There'll be signage at 6 o'clock, so we'll see you there. Go get dressed, go get freshened up.
No food there.
There's no food there,
Okay.
but all you can drink beer and wine. So eat and then drink, because I paid a lot of money, so go and drink, please.
What if you don't drink?
Well, I brought some stuff for you in my bag. I hope that wasn't recording. Okay. See you guys there.
This one still is.
I don't drink.
So I'm curious with Dr.